The morning sun cast long shadows through the tall windows of Kensington Palace as Kate walked through the quiet corridors. She had been living in the palace for 3 years now, ever since her marriage to Prince William, but there were still parts of the massive building she had never explored. Today was different, though. The royal family was away on official duties, and Kate found herself alone with nothing but time. She wandered through the East Wing, her footsteps echoing on the polished marble floors. The walls were lined with portraits of past royals, their eyes seeming to follow her as she passed. Kate had always felt a strange connection to these paintings, as if they held secrets waiting to be discovered. As she turned a corner, she noticed a door she had never seen before. It was partially hidden behind a heavy tapestry depicting a medieval hunting scene. The door was old, much older than the surrounding architecture, with intricate carvings that had been worn smooth by centuries of touch. Kate's curiosity got the better of her, and she gently pushed the tapestry aside. The door was locked, but something caught her eye. There was a small keyhole, and around it, barely visible, were words etched into the wood. She leaned closer, squinting to make out the faded text. "Truth lies beneath the crown," it read. Kate felt a shiver run down her spine. What could it mean? She spent the rest of the morning thinking about the mysterious door. During lunch, she casually mentioned it to Mrs. Henderson, the head housekeeper who had worked at the palace for over 40 years. The older woman's face went pale at the description. "That door, Your Highness, has been locked for as long as I can remember," Mrs. Henderson said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The late Queen Mother once told me it should never be opened. Some things are better left undisturbed." But Kate couldn't let it go. That evening, she found herself in the palace library, searching through old records and architectural plans. Most of the documents were routine renovation records, staff rosters, event planning notes. But then, tucked between two heavy volumes on royal protocol, she found a slim leather journal. The journal belonged to Princess Margaret, written during the 1960s. As Kate flipped through the pages, one entry made her heart race. "Found a most peculiar key today while exploring grandmother's old jewelry box. It's unlike any other key in the palace, ornate, with a crown emblem at the top. When I asked Mother about it, she became quite distressed and made me promise never to mention it again. But I've hidden it away. Perhaps one day, someone braver than I will discover what secrets it unlocks." Kate's hands trembled as she read the entry again. Could this be the key to the mysterious door? But where would Princess Margaret have hidden it? Over the next few days, Kate discreetly searched Princess Margaret's former rooms. She looked behind paintings, inside old jewelry boxes, even checked for loose floorboards. Nothing. She was about to give up when she remembered something William had once told her about his great-aunt. Princess Margaret had loved roses and had personally overseen the planting of a special rose garden in a secluded corner of the palace grounds. Kate made her way to the garden on a misty morning. The roses were in full bloom, their sweet scent filling the air. In the center of the garden stood a small stone bench with an inscription, "For those who seek beauty in truth." Kate ran her fingers along the inscription and felt one of the letters move slightly. Her heart pounding, she pressed harder, and a small compartment opened in the base of the bench. Inside, wrapped in faded silk, was the key. It was exactly as Princess Margaret had described, ornate, with a detailed crown at the top. Kate held it up to the light, noticing strange symbols etched along its length. She recognized some of them from her studies of royal heraldry, but others were completely foreign to her. That night, Kate barely slept. She knew she should tell William about her discovery, but something held her back. This felt like something she needed to do alone, at least initially. The next morning, she waited until the palace was quiet and made her way to the hidden door. The key slid into the lock with surprising ease. For a moment, nothing happened, and Kate wondered if she had been wrong. Then, with a soft click that seemed to echo through the centuries, the lock turned. The door opened to reveal a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Kate grabbed a flashlight from a nearby supply closet and began her descent. The stairs were stone, worn smooth in the center from generations of footsteps. The walls were damp, and she could hear the faint sound of dripping water somewhere below. At the bottom of the stairs, she found herself in a small chamber. The beam of her flashlight revealed stone walls covered in faded tapestries, and shelves lined with ancient books and scrolls. In the center of the room stood a desk, and on it, a leather-bound book marked with the royal seal. Kate approached the desk slowly, her heart hammering in her chest. She opened the book and began to read, her eyes widening with each page. The book contained records, detailed accounts of royal secrets dating back hundreds of years. Some were minor indiscretions, affairs, and financial improprieties that would have caused scandals in their time, but seemed almost quaint now. But others were far more serious. There were records of illegitimate children hidden away, of alliances with enemies of the state, of cover-ups that had shaped the course of British history. Kate read about a young prince who had been declared dead, but had actually been sent away because of a disability that the royal family of the time deemed shameful. She read about bribes paid to silence witnesses to royal crimes, about fake genealogies created to strengthen claims to the throne. But what shocked Kate most was a section near the end of the book, dated just 50 years ago. It detailed a conspiracy involving several high-ranking royals and government officials to suppress information about financial irregularities that had cost the country millions. The names were all there, clearly written, including some that Kate recognized as respected figures in recent history. As she read, Kate became aware of a presence behind her. She spun around to find Queen Elizabeth standing in the doorway, her face grave but not unkind. "I wondered when someone would finally find their way here," the Queen said, her voice steady despite her advanced age. "I've been waiting for you, Kate." Kate stammered, trying to explain, but the Queen held up a hand. "Princess Margaret told me about the key before she died. She said she had hidden it, hoping that one day the right person would find it. She believed that person would be you. But, Your Majesty, these secrets," Kate gestured to the book, "are the burden of the crown," the Queen finished. "Every monarch has added to that book, documenting the truths that could never be made public. It's a weight we carry, knowing that our history is not as noble as the stories we tell." The Queen moved into the room, her steps careful but determined. "The question now, Catherine, is what you will do with this knowledge." Kate felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. "I don't know," she admitted. "Some of these things, people deserve to know the truth." "Do they?" the Queen asked. "Would the truth serve them, or would it merely destroy their faith in institutions that, despite their flaws, have provided stability for centuries?" It was a question that would haunt Kate for weeks to come. She spent long hours in that secret chamber, reading through the records, trying to understand the complex web of decisions that had led to each cover-up, each lie, each buried truth. She learned about a king who had secretly funded hospitals for the poor against the wishes of Parliament, keeping it hidden to avoid political backlash. She read about a queen who had used her personal fortune to quietly pay off the debts of hundreds of families facing destitution. Not all secrets, she realized, were shameful. Some were acts of kindness that had to remain hidden due to the complex politics of their time. As days turned into weeks, Kate began to see patterns in the records. Each generation of royals had faced impossible choices, caught between personal conscience and public duty. The book was not just a record of failings, but a testament to the human struggle of those who wore the crown. William noticed the change in her. She had become quieter, more thoughtful. When he asked what was troubling her, she wanted desperately to tell him, but the Queen had asked her to wait. "This knowledge comes with responsibility," the Queen had said. "Before you share it, even with William, you must decide what kind of royal you will be. Will you be one who reveals all, consequences be damned? Or will you be one who guards these secrets, adding your own when the time comes?" Kate found herself drawn to the chamber again and again. She began to cross-reference the records with public histories, seeing how carefully crafted narratives had shaped public perception. She discovered that many historical events she had learned about in school had hidden royal connections, threads that, if pulled, would unravel centuries of carefully maintained stories. One entry particularly troubled her. It was recent, dated just 20 years ago, and involved a member of the royal family who was still alive. The secret, if revealed, would not only destroy that person's reputation, but could potentially bring down the entire monarchy. It involved financial dealings that, while technically legal, were morally questionable and had indirectly led to the suffering of thousands. Kate struggled with what to do. She believed in transparency, in truth. But she also understood the Queen's point about stability. The monarchy, for all its flaws, provided a sense of continuity and tradition that many people relied on. Would exposing these truths serve justice, or would it simply create chaos? She began to research each secret more thoroughly, using the palace's extensive archives. What she found complicated her initial reactions. Many of the cover-ups had prevented wars, saved lives, or protected innocent people who would have been caught in the crossfire scandal. The moral landscape was far grayer than she had initially thought. One night, as she sat in the chamber surrounded by centuries of secrets, Kate made a decision. She would not expose everything, but neither would she simply bury the truth. Instead, she would work to change things from within. She would use her knowledge to guide the royal family toward more transparency where possible, to right old wrongs quietly, and to ensure that future generations would have fewer secrets to hide. She began with small steps. Using information from the records, she established a charity to help descendants of people who had been wronged by past royal actions. She did it quietly, without fanfare, funding it with her own money. She also began pushing for more openness in current royal dealings, advocating for financial transparency and greater accountability. The Queen watched her efforts with approval. "You're learning," she said during one of their private meetings. "The burden of the crown is not just wearing it, but knowing when to reveal and when to conceal, when to act, and when to remain silent." Kate also began documenting her own era more honestly in the book. She wrote about the struggles the royal family faced in modernizing, about the tension between tradition and progress. She included her own doubts and failures, creating a record that future royals could learn from. As months passed, Kate found herself becoming more comfortable with the complexity of her position. She had not solved the dilemma of the secrets, but she had found a way to live with them. She used the knowledge to inform her decisions, to avoid repeating past mistakes, and to slowly, carefully guide the monarchy toward a more ethical future. The secret chamber became her sanctuary, a place where she could confront the unvarnished truth of royal history. She added modern security to protect it, ensuring that only future monarchs or their spouses will be able to access it. She also began creating a digital archive, knowing that future generations would need these records in a more accessible format. William eventually noticed her absences and confronted her. This time, with the Queen's permission, Kate told him everything. His reaction was much like hers had been: shock, anger, confusion, and, eventually, a sobering understanding of the complexity of their position. Together, they began to work on reforms. They pushed for greater transparency in royal finances, supported investigations into historical injustices, and quietly made reparations where possible. They couldn't undo the past, but they could work toward a better future. The British public noticed changes in the monarchy. It became more open, more accountable, more willing to acknowledge past mistakes without completely abandoning tradition. Some praised these changes, while others worried about the monarchy losing its mystique. Kate and William navigated these reactions carefully, always mindful of the secrets that still lay hidden. Years later, Kate would look back on the day she found the key as the moment her life truly changed. Not because of the crown or the palace, but because she had been forced to confront the complex nature of power, truth, and responsibility. The secrets had not broken her faith in the monarchy, but had transformed it into something more nuanced and mature. She continued to add to the book, documenting both the struggles and triumphs of their reign. She wrote about the difficulty of raising children who would one day inherit not just titles, but the knowledge of their family's true history. She recorded the small victories, the wrongs quietly righted, the traditions thoughtfully updated, the gradual transformation of an ancient institution. The key remained in her possession, a tangible reminder of the weight she carried. Sometimes, late at night, she would hold it and think about Princess Margaret, who had hidden it away, perhaps hoping for someone exactly like Kate to find it. Someone who would neither rashly expose everything nor blindly accept the status quo, but would find a third way. Kate realized that the true secret was not in the hidden chamber or the ancient book, but in understanding that leadership meant living with contradictions. It meant carrying the weight of history while working toward a better future. It meant keeping some secrets to prevent greater harm while slowly bringing light to shadows where possible. The palace corridors no longer felt mysterious to her. She knew their secrets now, but more importantly, she understood why some doors remained closed while others could finally be opened. The truth that shook the palace had not destroyed it, but had transformed it, one careful step at a time. As she walked through Kensington Palace, past the portraits of ancestors whose secrets she now knew, Kate felt a strange sense of connection to them. They had all carried this burden in their own ways, made their own choices between revelation and concealment. She was part of that continuum now, adding her own chapter to a story that would continue long after she was gone. The secret key had unlocked more than just a door. It had revealed the human heart of the monarchy, flawed, complex, sometimes noble, sometimes failing, but always struggling to balance power with conscience. And in that struggle, Kate had found her own path forward, one secret at a time. Kate's discovery journey had taken her from a curious newcomer to a guardian of centuries-old secrets. The chamber beneath the palace had become a testament to the complicated nature of power and the heavy responsibility of those who wield it. Each visit reminded her that history was not just about grand gestures and public moments, but also about the hidden decisions that shaped nations from the shadows. She had learned that truth was not always simple, that sometimes the greater good required difficult choices, and that the burden of leadership included knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. The palace that had once seemed like a fairy tale setting had revealed itself to be a complex repository of human nature in all its forms. The secret key remained with her always, a physical reminder of her journey from innocence to understanding. And in the hidden chamber, the book of secrets continued to grow, waiting for the next person brave enough to turn its pages and confront the complicated truths of power. Kate's transformation was complete. She was no longer just a duchess who had married into royalty. She had become a keeper of secrets, a guardian of history, and an architect of change. The truth had indeed shaken the palace, but from that shaking had come a stronger foundation for the future. The morning sun still cast long shadows through the palace windows, just as it had on that first day of discovery. But now Kate walked through them with purpose, carrying the weight of knowledge and the hope of transformation. The palace's secrets were safe with her, not because she would hide them forever, but because she understood the delicate balance between truth and stability, between justice and mercy. In the end, the greatest secret Kate discovered was not written in any book or hidden behind any door. It was the understanding that true leadership meant living with complexity, making imperfect choices, and working toward a better future while respecting the past. The key had unlocked not just a room, but a deeper understanding of what it meant to serve, to lead, and to carry the weight of history into tomorrow. The second phase of Kate's journey began on a cold autumn morning when she received an unexpected visitor. Sarah Hartwell, an elderly woman with sharp eyes and silver hair, had requested a private audience. She claimed to be the daughter of someone mentioned in the secret records. Kate met her in a private sitting room, away from the usual palace traffic. Sarah's hands shook slightly as she placed an old photograph on the table between them. It showed a young woman in 1950s clothing standing beside a royal car. "This was my mother, Eleanor Hartwell," Sarah began, her voice steady despite her obvious nervousness. "She worked in the palace for 10 years. Then, One day, she simply vanished from royal service. My family was told she had resigned for health reasons, but I never believed it. Kate's heart raced. She remembered reading about Eleanor Hartwell in the secret records. The young woman had witnessed something she shouldn't have, a meeting between a senior royal and foreign agents that, if exposed, could have triggered an international crisis during the Cold War. The records indicated she had been relocated with compensation. Your Highness, Sarah continued, I've spent 40 years trying to understand what happened to my mother. She never spoke of her time at the palace, but on her deathbed, she gave me this. She produced a small brass button with the royal insignia. She said the truth was in the palace, waiting for someone brave enough to find it. Kate faced an agonizing decision. She knew exactly what had happened to Eleanor Hartwell. The woman had been sent to Canada with a new identity and a substantial payment to ensure her silence. The relocation had been voluntary, but the pressure applied had been immense. Eleanor had lost her family, her identity, and her homeland to protect a secret that, in hindsight, seemed less critical than the lives it had disrupted. I understand your search for answers, Kate said carefully, weighing each word. Your mother was a loyal servant to the crown. Sometimes, such loyalty requires great sacrifice. Sarah leaned forward. I don't want money or recognition. I just want to know if my mother was the hero I always believed her to be, or if she was simply another casualty of palace politics. That night, Kate couldn't sleep. She returned to the secret chamber and reread Eleanor Hartwell's file. The more she learned, the more complex the situation became. Eleanor had indeed been pressured to leave, but the records also showed that she had prevented a potential catastrophe. Her silence had allowed diplomatic channels to resolve the crisis quietly, potentially saving thousands of lives. Kate made a decision that would set a precedent for how she would handle such cases going forward. She invited Sarah back and, without revealing the specific details that could still cause diplomatic issues, told her a version of the truth. Your mother was indeed a hero, Kate said, watching tears form in Sarah's eyes. She made a choice that protected many lives, though it cost her dearly. The crown owes her a debt that can never be fully repaid. Kate established a private fund to support Sarah and other descendants of people who had made similar sacrifices. She couldn't undo the past, but she could acknowledge it and provide some form of restitution. This encounter opened a new chapter in Kate's secret work. She began carefully reviewing the records for other cases where innocent people had paid heavy prices for royal secrets. Each case required delicate handling. Too much revelation could still cause harm, but complete silence perpetuated injustice. She developed a system, working with a small team of trusted advisors who were gradually brought into the circle of knowledge. They would investigate each case, determine what could be safely revealed or rectified, and take action where possible. It was slow, painstaking work that required balancing historical truth with present-day consequences. One particularly challenging case involved a cover-up from the 1970s. A young royal had been involved in a car accident that had resulted in a death. The victim's family had been paid to remain silent, and the incident had been completely buried. The royal in question was still alive, now elderly, and respected for decades of charitable work. Kate agonized over this revelation. Exposing the truth would destroy not just one person's reputation, but could undermine the good work they had done since. Yet the victim's family deserved justice, or at least acknowledgement. After months of deliberation, she arranged for a private meeting between the royal and the victim's surviving family members. The resulting reconciliation, while private, brought closure to both parties. These activities had to be conducted in absolute secrecy. Kate developed an elaborate system of codes and secure communications to manage her parallel work. To the public, and even most palace staff, she was simply a dutiful duchess focused on her official charities and responsibilities. Only a select few knew about her other role as guardian and gradual revealer of palace secrets. The queen, now very elderly, watched Kate's efforts with a mixture of pride and concern. During one of their final private conversations, she said, "You've chosen the hardest path, Catherine. It would have been easier to either expose everything or bury it all. This middle way you found requires constant vigilance and judgment. Kate nodded, understanding the weight of the Queen's words. I've learned that truth isn't always black and white, Your Majesty. Sometimes the kindest thing is a carefully managed revelation. As the years passed, Kate's secret work began to show subtle results. The monarchy's reputation for transparency improved, though few knew the full extent of the changes happening behind the scenes. Historical scholars noticed that certain previously restricted archives were gradually being opened. Descendants of people wronged by past royal actions found unexpected support for their causes. William, now fully aware of and involved in Kate's work, helped her modernize the record-keeping system. They created encrypted digital archives with time-locked releases, ensuring that future generations would have access to the truth when it could no longer cause active harm. They established protocols for future monarchs on how to handle sensitive information and historical injustices. One of the most significant changes was in how current royal activities were documented. Kate insisted on more complete and honest record-keeping, even for sensitive matters. Future generations shouldn't have to piece together the truth from fragments, she argued. They should have clear, contemporaneous accounts of our decisions and their reasoning. This new approach was tested when a modern scandal threatened to engulf a junior royal. In the past, the palace's instinct would have been to cover up, pay off, and bury. Instead, Kate advocated for a controlled revelation, acknowledging wrongdoing while managing the narrative to minimize collateral damage. The approach worked, with the public appreciating the honesty while the institution's stability was maintained. The secret chamber itself underwent changes. Kate had it properly preserved and climate-controlled to protect the historical documents. She added her own writings to the collection, not just records of secrets and cover-ups, but reflections on the moral complexities of leadership and the evolution of the monarchy's relationship with truth. She also began a project to create a truth timeline, a document that would indicate when various secrets could be safely revealed. Some would remain sealed for decades more, while others were marked for gradual release. It was her way of ensuring that eventually history would have a more complete picture of the monarchy's true story. The work took its toll. Kate found herself carrying the emotional weight of centuries of secrets. She knew things about historical figures that would shock the public, understood the real motivations behind major historical events, and held knowledge that could rewrite textbooks. Sometimes at state dinners or public events, she would look at portraits of past royals and feel the burden of knowing their hidden truths. But she also found purpose in the work. Each small act of restitution, each careful revelation, each step toward greater transparency felt like progress. She was not just maintaining the monarchy, but evolving it, helping it shed the worst of its past while preserving what was valuable. One of her most ambitious projects was creating a secret council of advisors from various fields, historians, ethicists, legal experts, who could help navigate the complex decisions around truth and revelation. They met in secret, bound by strict confidentiality agreements, to discuss how to handle the most sensitive historical secrets. Through their work, several significant historical corrections were made. Museum displays were quietly updated to reflect more accurate versions of events. Scholarship funds were established for descendants of people written out of history. Archives long thought lost were discovered and made available to researchers. Kate also worked to change the culture within the palace itself. She instituted training programs for staff that emphasized ethical decision-making and the importance of accurate record-keeping. She created channels for whistleblowers within the royal household, ensuring that future cover-ups would be harder to orchestrate. The relationship between the monarchy and the press evolved as well. While not revealing the existence of secret archives, Kate pushed for more openness in current affairs. The palace became more willing to acknowledge mistakes quickly rather than letting speculation fester. This approach, revolutionary by royal standards, actually strengthened public trust. As technology advanced, new challenges emerged. The digital age made keeping secrets harder, but also provided new tools for managing information. Kate worked with cybersecurity experts to ensure that the digital archives were protected while also creating systems for eventual controlled release of historical information. One particularly poignant moment came when Kate discovered records relating to her own family's history. She learned that her ancestors had been affected by royal decisions in ways she had never imagined. This personal connection to the historical injustices deepened her commitment to her secret work. She began to see patterns in how power corrupted and how secrecy enabled abuse. But she also saw examples of tremendous courage, people who had risked everything to do what was right, even if their stories had been hidden. These unsung heroes became her inspiration. Kate established a private memorial in the palace gardens, known only to those involved in her secret work. It honored all those who had been silenced, relocated, or erased from history in service of protecting royal secrets. Each year, she would hold a small ceremony there, acknowledging debts that could never be publicly recognized. The education of her children became a particularly complex issue. How do you prepare future monarchs for the weight of these secrets? Kate developed a gradual program of revelation, teaching them first about the complexities of leadership and the importance of truth before eventually introducing them to their full inheritance of knowledge. She wrote letters to each of her children to be opened when they reached certain ages, explaining the burden they would inherit and the choices they would face. She wanted them to understand that the crown came not just with privilege, but with the responsibility to reckon with and learn from the past. As Kate aged, she began to consider her legacy. The secret chamber now contained not just historical records, but a complete archive of her efforts to address past injustices. Future guardians of these secrets would be able to see not just what had been hidden, but also how she had worked to make amends. She established protocols for choosing future keepers of the secrets, ensuring that only those with the wisdom and moral courage to handle the responsibility would be entrusted with the knowledge. The selection process itself became a closely guarded secret, designed to identify individuals who could balance truth with discretion. The monarchy Kate was helping to shape was fundamentally different from the one she had married into, though few outside her inner circle knew the full extent of the changes. It was more ethical, more transparent, and more accountable while still maintaining the mystique and tradition that many valued. Sometimes, late at night in the secret chamber, Kate would reflect on her journey. She had started as a young woman in love, marrying into what seemed like a fairy tale. The discovery of the key had shattered that illusion, but had replaced it with something more complex and ultimately more meaningful. She had become a guardian of truth, a careful reformer, and a bridge between the monarchy's past and its future. The secrets she protected were no longer just shameful cover-ups, but included the story of transformation, how an ancient institution had begun to reckon with its history and evolve. The brass key, now worn smooth from her touch, remained her constant reminder of the day everything changed. But it no longer felt like a burden. It had become a symbol of trust, responsibility, and the possibility of change from within. Kate's work was far from complete. Many secrets remained locked away, waiting for the right time to be revealed. Many injustices had yet to be addressed. But she had created a framework for continued progress, a way for future generations to continue the work of bringing light to shadows while protecting what needed protection. As she prepared to pass on her knowledge to the next generation, Kate felt a sense of accomplishment mixed with humility. She had not solved all the problems or revealed all the truths, but she had changed the trajectory of the monarchy, steering it toward a future where truth and tradition could coexist more honestly. The palace that had once seemed full of impenetrable mysteries had become a place of gradual revelation and quiet reform. The truth that had shaken its foundations had not destroyed it, but had made it stronger, more honest, and more prepared for the challenges of a changing world. Kate's legacy would not be measured in public accolades or historical recognition. Most of what she had done would remain secret for decades, perhaps centuries. But in the careful balance between revelation and discretion, in the quiet acts of justice and restitution, in the transformation of how the monarchy related to its own history, she had written a new chapter in the long story of the British crown. The secret key had unlocked more than a door. It had opened a path toward a more ethical future, one careful step at a time. And as Kate prepared to hand that key to the next guardian, she knew that the work would continue, each generation building on the last, slowly bringing the monarchy's shadows into the light. The third phase of Kate's journey began with an unexpected crisis. An investigative journalist named Marcus Webb had somehow obtained fragments of information about the secret archives. His aggressive pursuit of the story threatened to expose not just individual secrets, but the entire system Kate had carefully built over the years. Webb had been digging into historical inconsistencies in royal records, following paper trails that most researchers would have dismissed as clerical errors. But he had a sharp eye and had noticed patterns, gaps in archives, personnel records that didn't align, financial discrepancies that suggested cover-ups. His investigation was getting dangerously close to the truth. Kate first became aware of the threat when her security team intercepted communications suggesting Webb was planning to publish a series of articles titled The Hidden History of the House of Windsor. The fragments they had gathered indicated he knew about relocated witnesses, covered-up scandals, and the existence of secret records. An emergency meeting was convened in the secret chamber. Kate, William, and their most trusted advisors gathered to discuss how to handle this unprecedented threat. Some advocated for the traditional approach, legal threats, injunctions, pressure on publishers. Others suggested trying to discredit Webb or redirect his investigation. But Kate proposed something different. "What if we don't fight this?" she said, surprising everyone in the room. "What if we use this as an opportunity to control the narrative and begin the process of revelation we've been planning?" The room erupted in debate. The risks were enormous. Uncontrolled exposure could damage the monarchy irreparably, hurt innocent people, and create chaos. But Kate argued that they had always known this day would come. Better to manage it than be ambushed by it. She proposed a radical strategy: approach Webb directly and offer him a controlled look into certain aspects of the truth in exchange for responsible reporting. It was a gamble that went against every instinct of royal protection, but Kate believed it was their best option. William supported her, though with reservations. "We're essentially trusting the monarchy's future to a journalist," he said. "But I agree. If we don't control this narrative, it will control us." The approach to Webb required delicate handling. Kate arranged for an intermediary to make contact, suggesting a meeting to discuss historical research of mutual interest. Webb, sensing a story even bigger than what he had already uncovered, agreed to meet. The meeting took place in a neutral location, a private room in an old London club. Kate attended personally, accompanied by her most trusted advisor. Webb, a man in his 50s with intense eyes and graying hair, was clearly surprised to be meeting with the Duchess herself. "Mr. Webb," Kate began, "I understand you've been researching certain historical inconsistencies related to the royal family. Your work has been remarkably thorough." Webb studied her carefully. "Your Highness, are you here to threaten me or bribe me?" "Neither," Kate replied. "I'm here to offer you something far more valuable, a portion of the truth, in exchange for your cooperation in revealing it responsibly." What followed was a careful negotiation. Kate revealed the existence of historical records documenting past royal secrets, though she didn't disclose the location or full extent of the archives. She offered Webb exclusive access to certain stories, ones that had been marked for eventual revelation anyway, in exchange for his agreement to work with the palace on timing and presentation. Webb was skeptical at first. "Why should I trust you? This could be a trap, a way to control or silence me." Kate made a calculated decision. She shared with him the story of Eleanor Hartwell, showing him original documents that proved the palace's past willingness to sacrifice individuals for institutional protection. Webb's eyes widened as he read the files. "This is what you're fighting against," Webb said, understanding dawning in his eyes. "This is what I'm trying to change," Kate corrected. "But Change must be managed carefully, or it becomes destruction. After hours of discussion, they reached an agreement. Webb would be given access to certain historical stories, verified by palace documents, which he could publish in a series of articles. In return, he would work with Kate's team on timing and would not pursue leads that could harm living individuals or current national security. The first article, published 3 months later, sent shockwaves through the establishment. It revealed the story of a 1960s financial scandal involving a minor royal, complete with documentation showing how the palace had covered it up. But the article also included context about the different era and the subsequent quiet restitution that had been made to affected parties. Public reaction was mixed, but generally more positive than the palace had feared. Many appreciated the transparency, even if it revealed past wrongdoing. The controlled nature of the revelation allowed the palace to frame it as part of a modernization effort rather than a shameful exposure. Kate used this opening to accelerate some of her reform efforts. She announced a new palace policy of reviewing historical records for potential release, framing it as part of the monarchy's commitment to transparency. Behind the scenes, her team worked furiously to prepare more stories for gradual release. Webb proved to be a surprisingly cooperative partner. His access to verified royal secrets made him one of the most respected royal correspondents in Britain. He understood the delicate balance required and worked with Kate's team to ensure revelations were historically important but not needlessly destructive. However, this new openness created its own challenges. Other journalists, seeing Webb's success, began their own investigations. Foreign intelligence services showed renewed interest in royal secrets. Some members of the extended royal family, worried about their own secrets being exposed, began to push back against Kate's reforms. One particularly tense moment came when a European tabloid obtained information about a living royal's past indiscretion, something Kate had decided should remain sealed. The palace faced a dilemma: use traditional methods to suppress the story, contradicting their new transparency, or let it run and cause unnecessary harm. Kate found a third way. She authorized a preemptive disclosure that acknowledged certain past mistakes by unnamed royals while emphasizing the personal growth and service that have followed. It was vague enough to protect individuals, but honest enough to maintain credibility. The tabloid-specific story, when published, seemed like old news and failed to gain traction. This experience led Kate to develop what became known internally as the doctrine of managed transparency. It established principles for what should be revealed and when historical injustices that had been covered up would be gradually exposed, with restitution where possible. Past mistakes by royals would be acknowledged in general terms when necessary, protecting specific individuals where the public interest didn't require exposure. Current activities would be conducted with much greater openness to prevent future secrets. National security and diplomatic secrets would remain protected unless their exposure served a greater good. The implementation of this doctrine required constant vigilance and difficult decisions. Kate established a review board consisting of historians, ethicists, journalists, and legal experts to help make these determinations. The board met monthly to review requests for information and to plan future revelations. One of the most challenging cases involved wartime secrets. The archives contained information about royal involvement in covert operations during World War II, some heroic, some morally ambiguous. Revealing these could affect international relations and the families of those involved. After extensive deliberation, Kate authorized the release of stories that showed royal courage during the war, while keeping sealed those that might damage current alliances or hurt innocent descendants. It was a compromise that satisfied no one completely, but maintained the balance she sought. The gradual revelations began to change public perception of the monarchy. Rather than seeing it as a secretive institution hiding shameful truths, many began to view it as an evolving organization willing to confront its past. Support for the monarchy actually increased in some polls, particularly among younger people who appreciated the honesty. But the psychological toll on Kate continued to mount. She knew secrets that would never be revealed, carried the weight of decisions about what truths to tell and which to keep hidden. She developed insomnia, often spending nights in the secret chamber, reading and rereading files, second-guessing her decisions. William noticed the strain and insisted she take breaks from work. They established a rotation system where trusted advisors would handle routine decisions, calling on Kate only for the most sensitive matters. This helped, but the ultimate responsibility still rested with her. One night, while reviewing a particularly troubling file about a covered-up tragedy from the 1980s, Kate broke down. The weight of all the secrets, all the pain hidden in those archives, overwhelmed her. William found her in the chamber, surrounded by documents, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know if I'm doing the right thing," she sobbed. "Every decision I make affects so many people. How do I balance truth with kindness, justice with stability?" William held her, understanding the impossible position she was in. "You're doing something no one has done before," he said. "You're trying to heal centuries of wounds while keeping the patient alive. It's not about perfect decisions. It's about making the best choices you can with the wisdom you have." This crisis led to an important realization. Kate understood she had been trying to bear the burden alone for too long. She expanded her circle of trust, bringing in more advisors and delegating more decisions. She also began seeing a therapist, one cleared for the highest levels of secrecy, to help process the emotional weight of her work. The therapy sessions helped Kate develop better frameworks for decision-making. She learned to accept that she couldn't right every wrong or reveal every truth. Her job was to move the institution in the right direction, not to achieve perfection. As the years passed, the system Kate had established began to function more smoothly. The review board became more efficient at processing requests. The controlled revelations continued, each one carefully managed to maximize transparency while minimizing harm. The partnership with selected journalists like Webb provided a channel for information that maintained credibility while allowing oversight. Some of the most meaningful moments came from private reconciliations. Families who had been wronged by past royal actions were quietly contacted and offered apologies and restitution. Most of these meetings never made the news, but they provided closure for people who had carried grievances for generations. Kate personally attended many of these meetings. She would sit with elderly people who remembered parents or grandparents who had been silenced or exiled, listening to their stories, acknowledging the wrongs done, and offering what comfort she could. These sessions were emotionally draining, but reinforced the importance of her work. One particularly moving encounter was with the grandson of a man who had been imprisoned on false charges to protect a royal from scandal in the 1950s. The man had died in prison, his family left in shame and poverty. Kate not only arranged for financial restitution, but also for a private ceremony acknowledging his innocence, attended by senior royals. "My grandfather died believing the world thought him a criminal," the grandson said through tears. "This doesn't bring him back, but it gives him back his honor." These private acts of justice became as important to Kate as the public revelations. She kept a private journal documenting each reconciliation, each wrong partially righted. It helped her remember why she continued this difficult work. The international implications of Kate's Transparency Project became increasingly complex. Other royal families and governments watched nervously as Britain's monarchy began revealing historical secrets. Some worried about precedents being set, others about their own secrets being exposed in the British archives. Kate had to navigate diplomatic sensitivities carefully. When the archives revealed information affecting other nations or royal families, she would privately notify them before any public release. This courtesy prevented several international incidents and actually strengthened some relationships as foreign powers appreciated the warning and the discretion. One significant test came when the archives revealed British royal involvement in a colonial-era incident that had been blamed entirely on local officials. The revelation could damage relations with a former colony, now an important ally. Kate spent months in secret negotiations, ultimately arranging for a joint statement that acknowledged the truth while emphasizing the modern friendship between the nations. Technology continued to present both opportunities and challenges. Deepfakes and disinformation campaigns attempted to exploit the controlled revelations, creating false leaked documents that mixed truth with lies. Kate's team had to develop sophisticated verification systems and work with tech companies to combat false information. They also used technology to their advantage. Virtual reality experiences were created for educational purposes, allowing people to understand historical context better. AI was employed to help analyze the vast archives and identify patterns of injustice that might otherwise be missed. As Kate entered her later years as a working royal, she began focusing on succession planning for the secret archives. She identified potential future guardians and began their training, teaching them not just the protocols but the philosophy behind the managed transparency. She wrote extensively about her experiences and the lessons learned. These writings would serve as guidance for future keepers of the secrets. She emphasized the importance of moral courage, the need for advisors, and the acceptance that perfect justice was impossible, but that imperfect progress was valuable. The transformation of the monarchy's relationship with truth had become institutionalized. What had begun as Kate's personal mission was now embedded in the structure of the royal household. Transparency reviews were routine. The review board was an established body, and the principle of eventual disclosure was accepted policy. But challenges remained. Some secrets in the archives were so explosive that Kate couldn't envision them ever being safely revealed. Others involved people still living who deserved privacy despite historical curiosity. The balance between transparency and protection remained delicate. One ongoing debate was about the secret chamber itself. Some advisors argued it should be acknowledged publicly, turned into a symbol of the monarchy's commitment to eventually revealing all truths. Others, including Kate, believed its secrecy was essential to its function. The debate remained unresolved, left for future guardians to decide. Kate also grappled with the question of her own legacy. Most of her work would remain unknown to the public for decades. She would be remembered as a modernizing duchess, but few would know the extent of her reforms. She had to find satisfaction in the work itself, rather than in recognition. As she reflected on her journey, Kate often thought about that first day when she had found the key. She had been so young, so naive about what she would discover and what it would cost her emotionally. But she had no regrets. The burden had been heavy, but the work had been meaningful. The monarchy she was helping to leave behind was fundamentally different from the one she had joined. It was more honest, more accountable, and more capable of confronting its past while building its future. The secrets remained, but they no longer festered in darkness. Instead, they were carefully tended, waiting for their proper time to emerge into the light. Kate's greatest achievement was not in the secrets she revealed, but in the system she created for managing truth. She had shown that institutions could evolve, that transparency and tradition could coexist, and that confronting the past was essential to building a better future. The key that had started it all remained in her possession, a tangible link to Princess Margaret and all the royals who had wrestled with these same questions of truth and duty. Kate had added her own chapter to their story, one of careful reform and managed revelation. As she prepared to gradually hand over responsibilities to the next generation, Kate felt a sense of completion. Not because the work was done, it would never be truly finished, but because she had set on the right path. The palace's relationship with truth had been forever changed, and that change would ripple through generations to come. The secret chamber would continue to hold its archives, but it was no longer a prison for inconvenient truths. It had become a place of reckoning and eventual redemption. And somewhere in the palace, future finders of keys would discover not just secrets, but the story of how one woman had chosen to face them, manage them, and slowly bring them into the light. Kate's journey from discoverer to guardian to reformer was nearly complete. She had shaken the palace with truth, but from that shaking had built something stronger and more honest. The monarchy would face future challenges, but it would face them with a clearer understanding of its past and a commitment to greater transparency. The brass key, worn smooth by her touch, would one day pass to another hand. But the transformation it had unlocked would endure a permanent change in how the palace related to its own history and to the truth itself. The final phase of Kate's remarkable journey began with a discovery that would test everything she had built over the decades. While conducting a routine digitization of the oldest documents in the secret archive, her team uncovered a hidden compartment within an ancient scroll case. Inside was a document that predated all others in the collection, a confession written by a medieval king that, if revealed, could challenge the very legitimacy of the current royal line. The document, authenticated by multiple experts sworn to secrecy, revealed that a 14th century succession had been falsified. The rightful heir had been murdered, and his infant brother had been placed on the throne instead. Every monarch since, including the current royal family, descended from this illegitimate line. The murderer's confession had been hidden away, preserved by guilty conspirators who couldn't bring themselves to destroy evidence of their crime. Kate stared at the ancient parchment, her hands trembling. This wasn't just another secret to be managed. This struck at the heart of the monarchy's existence. The legal and constitutional implications were staggering. If revealed, it could trigger a crisis that would make all previous revelations seem trivial by comparison. She convened an emergency meeting with her most trusted advisors. The debate was intense and emotional. Some argued the secret must be kept forever. The statute of limitations on medieval murders had long passed, and the current royal family had earned their position through centuries of service. Others felt that Kate's own principles of transparency demanded revelation, regardless of consequences. This is different, William argued during one heated discussion. We're not talking about covering up a scandal or protecting someone's reputation. We're talking about the foundational legitimacy of the crown itself. Kate found herself torn between her commitment to truth and her duty to stability. She had spent decades carefully revealing secrets, building trust through transparency. How could she justify hiding the biggest secret of all? She spent weeks in the archive, researching the historical context. The murdered prince had been a child, killed in a power struggle he couldn't have understood. His younger brother had grown up to be a good king, unaware of the crime that had placed him on the throne. Generations of monarchs had served their country honorably, never knowing their line's dark origin. Kate also researched the potential claimants if the true lineage were revealed. The legitimate line had survived, obscurely, through various European noble families. There were dozens of potential claimants, none with any preparation for interest in the British throne. Revealing the truth wouldn't restore justice. It would only create chaos. But the weight of this knowledge was crushing. Kate found herself unable to sleep, haunted by the faces and royal portraits that lined the palace walls. Every state ceremony, every official act, felt tainted by this fundamental deception. She sought guidance from unexpected sources. She met privately with philosophers, theologians, and ethicists, presenting the dilemma as a theoretical question. Their responses varied, but one elderly philosopher's words particularly resonated. Truth has value, but it is not the only value. Sometimes the greater truth is found in what has grown from a lie. The service, the stability, the good that has been built on a flawed foundation. Kate also considered the modern context. The monarchy's power was now largely symbolic. Its legitimacy derived more from public consent than ancient bloodlines. Would revealing a medieval crime serve any purpose beyond satisfying historical curiosity at the cost of enormous disruption? After months of anguish, Kate made her decision. The medieval confession would remain sealed, but not hidden. She created a special protocol for this ultimate secret. It would be preserved, passed down through future guardians, but with instructions that it should only be revealed if the monarchy itself chose to end, providing historical closure. However, Kate's struggle with this decision led to a profound shift in her approach. She realized that her transparency project had always had limits, and she needed to be more honest about those boundaries. She authored a philosophical document, to be released after her death, discussing the ethics of historical truth without revealing specifics. This document, titled On Truth and Time, would become one of the most important philosophical works on institutional transparency. In it, Kate argued that while truth was valuable, its release must be weighed against present harm and the possibility of redemption through good works. She wrote about how institutions could acknowledge their imperfect foundations while still serving noble purposes. The discovery of the medieval confession also prompted Kate to accelerate other aspects of her transparency work. If this ultimate secret would remain hidden, she felt even more obligated to reveal everything else that could be safely disclosed. The pace of controlled revelations increased, with more stories from the archives being shared with the public. One significant project was the creation of a public museum dedicated to the hidden history of the monarchy. Located in a renovated wing of a minor palace, it displayed artifacts and told stories that had been secret for generations. The museum didn't reveal everything. Kate's team carefully curated what could be shown, but it provided unprecedented insight into the human side of royal history. The museum's opening was a major event. Kate personally guided the first tour, showing selected journalists and historians through rooms that told stories of courage and cowardice, justice and injustice, all previously hidden for public view. The response was overwhelmingly positive, with many praising the monarchy's willingness to confront its complex past. But even as she received acclaim for the museum, Kate carried the weight of what it didn't show. The medieval confession remained in the secret archive, a constant reminder of the limits of transparency. She often stood before it, wondering if she had made the right choice. Her health began to decline, partly from age, but also from the cumulative stress of decades of carrying these secrets. Her doctors were puzzled by symptoms that seemed more psychological than physical, the literal weight of knowledge manifesting in physical form. During this period, Kate focused intensively on preparing her successors. She selected a small group of younger royals and advisors who would inherit responsibility for the archives. Their training was extensive, covering not just the practical aspects of managing secrets, but the philosophical and emotional challenges they would face. She shared with them her hardest decisions, including the medieval confession. Their reactions varied. Some immediately agreed with her choice to keep it sealed. Others struggled as she had. These discussions helped refine the principles that would guide future guardians. Kate also worked to strengthen the institutional framework around the archives. She established legal protections, ensuring that future governments couldn't arbitrarily seize or expose the secrets. She created endowments to fund the ongoing work of review and revelation. She built relationships with international partners who could provide sanctuary for the archives if political upheaval ever threatened them. One of her final major acts was organizing a secret symposium of guardians of historical secrets from around the world. Representatives from various governments, religious institutions, and cultural organizations gathered to share best practices for managing historical truth. The symposium led to an informal network that would continue long after Kate's active involvement ended. As her strength waned, Kate spent more time writing. She produced volumes of guidance for future guardians, sharing not just policies but the emotional and spiritual insights she had gained. She wrote about the loneliness of keeping secrets, the temptation to reveal everything or nothing, and the difficult middle path of managed transparency. She also wrote personal letters to future monarchs, to be opened at key moments in their reigns. These letters contained not specific secrets, but wisdom about handling the burden of hidden truth. She wanted them to understand that keeping some secrets was not weakness, but a form of service. Kate's final visit to the secret chamber was on a winter morning, snow falling softly outside the palace. She moved slowly through the archive she had tended for so long, touching documents that represented lives changed, truths hidden, justice delayed but not denied. She paused longest at the medieval confession, that ultimate secret that would outlive her. In her final entry in the Guardian's journal, she wrote, "I leave this work incomplete, as it must always be. Truth and time are dance partners, not enemies. We reveal what we can, when we can, always mindful of the living even as we honor the dead. The perfect is the enemy of the good, and I choose the good, imperfect progress over pure principle. May those who follow be wiser than I, but may they also be kind." Kate arranged for a gradual transition of her responsibilities, ensuring continuity in the work. The review board would continue its meetings, the museum would expand its exhibitions, and the controlled revelations would proceed on schedule. The system she had built was now larger than any individual, which was exactly what she had intended. Her public farewell to active duties was marked by ceremonies celebrating her conventional charitable work. Few knew they were also honoring the architect of the monarchy's transformation relationship with truth. Kate stood at these events, smiling and waving, carrying secrets that would die with her and others that would outlive her by centuries. In private moments with William and their children, she shared what wisdom she could without burdening them with specifics they didn't need to know. She taught them that service sometimes meant carrying weights others couldn't see, that true leadership required accepting imperfection, and that the greatest courage was often found in restraint rather than action. The brass key that had started her journey was passed to her chosen successor in a private ceremony in the secret chamber. Kate's hand shook as she handed it over, remembering the young woman who had first turned it in a lock, not knowing how it would change her life. "This key opens more than doors," she told her successor. "It opens questions that have no perfect answers. Be patient with yourself. Be humble before history. And remember that your duty is not to the past or the future, but to the bridge between them." As Kate withdrew from active management of the archives, she found unexpected peace. The burden she had carried for so long was now shared. The systems she had built were functioning, and the monarchy's relationship with truth, while still complex, was healthier than it had ever been. She spent her final years writing memoirs that would themselves be sealed for decades, adding one last layer to the archive she had guarded. In these personal reflections, she was completely honest about her doubts, her mistakes, and her reasoning. Future guardians would have not just her policies, but her heart. The transformation Kate had overseen was remarkable. The monarchy had evolved from an institution reflexively hiding inconvenient truths to one that thoughtfully managed historical revelation. Public trust had increased even as more secrets were revealed, proving that honesty, even partial honesty, was stronger than deception. The secret chamber remained, but it was no longer a dark corner of shame. It had become a place of careful stewardship, where the past was preserved and examined, waiting for the right moment to step into the light. The archives continued to grow, but now they included stories of reconciliation alongside records of wrongdoing. Kate's legacy was embedded in the very structure of the modern monarchy. Every decision about transparency, every careful revelation, every act of historical justice bore the imprint of her philosophy. She had shown that institutions could change, that the past could be acknowledged without being enslaved to it. The medieval confession remained sealed, a reminder that some truths served no purpose in revelation. But around it, thousands of other truths had found their way into the world, carefully, thoughtfully, with consideration for both justice and mercy. Kate had not solved the problem of historical secrets, but she had transformed it from a source of shame into a manageable responsibility. As she reflected on her life's work, Kate often thought about Princess Margaret, who had hidden the key hoping someone would find it. Margaret could never have imagined the transformation that discovery would trigger. The key had unlocked not just a door, but a new way of thinking about truth, power, and the possibility of institutional redemption. Kate's story would itself become part of the archives, sealed for an appropriate time. Future generations would read about her struggles, her decisions, her transformation from a young bride to a guardian of centuries of secrets. They would judge her choices with the benefit of hindsight, perhaps finding her too cautious or too bold. But Kate had made peace with future judgment. She had done what she could with the wisdom she had, balancing competing values in an imperfect world. She had taken an institution built on secrecy and helped it find a way to face its past while serving its present. The work would continue, but the foundation was solid. The palace Kate left behind still held secrets, but it held them differently. They were no longer festering wounds, but carefully tended responsibilities. The truth that had shaken the palace had not destroyed it, but had transformed it into something more honest, more human, and ultimately stronger. In the end, Kate's greatest achievement was not in the secret she revealed or those she kept, but in creating a system that could wisely manage both. She had shown that truth was not simple, that transparency was not absolute, but that progress was possible. The key she had found had unlocked a future where the palace could stand both on its history and despite it. The morning sun still cast long shadows through the palace windows, as it had on that first day of discovery. But now those shadows were not hiding places, but reminders of the complex interplay between light and dark, revelation and discretion, past and present. Kate had walked through those shadows and emerged with wisdom that would guide the palace for generations to come. Her journey from innocent discoverer to wise guardian was complete. The secrets remained, but they no longer ruled from the shadows. Instead, they waited patiently in their chamber, tended by those who understood that truth was not a weapon, but a responsibility, not a simple revelation, but a complex trust. The palace would keep its secrets and share them, hide its past, and reveal it in the eternal dance between transparency and discretion that Kate had choreographed. The truth had indeed shaken the palace, but from that shaking had come a stability built on something stronger than deception, an honest acknowledgement of imperfection, and a commitment to doing better. Kate's story ended where it began, with a key and a choice. But the choice was no longer whether to open the door, but how to wisely manage what lay beyond it. And in that wisdom, passed down through careful teaching and hard-won experience, lay the true transformation of the palace and its relationship with the truth that had once threatened to destroy it.